Hello, welcome to a special edition of View from the Bridge. Something slightly different today. We're marking the 10th season of Peter Moore's head coach of Notts by getting some people to come on and speak about their experiences of working alongside him. And who better to get than someone who won his county's first ever championship title with Peter Moore's, a man who ended up winning three championships as well as limited overs trophies, and as a coach as well, won more trophies, and as a consultant, has had an incredible career, and is even the dad to two professional cricketers as well. Welcome, Chris Adams.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
It's great. It's great to have you here. We'll also touch upon a few other things as well. I mean, your time with Derbyshire and those matches against Notts, and the fact that you were thinking of coming to play for us as well, and so a few bits we'll get into. Also, I was reading, I didn't know this, you were a consultant at Trembridge, working with some of the academy players. Is that correct?
I only very briefly, yes. I just finished working. I'd done a series with Sri Lanka as a consultant coach. Sri Lanka's tour of Ireland and England, when Paul Firebrace vacated the head coach roles 2 weeks before a series against England and took the assistant role, ironically, to Peter Moore's with England. So they were in need of an extra coach to come on board for Sri Lanka. So I filled that void in a very successful series for Sri Lanka. They beat England in all three formats in that sort of 10, 11-week series. And then post that series, there was still half a summer left. So I had a call from Mick Newell, who said, would I be interested in doing a short-term secondment as a consultant to review the pathway and academy setup at Notts, and just some fresh eyes on it, and see if there were any new thoughts, ideas that they could sort of implement moving forward to improve that part of the club. So yeah, I probably spent about six weeks in various pathway situations and academy situations, fixtures, training sessions, and very much enjoyed it. There's the training ground across the road, which was pretty impressive. So I spent a bit of time there as well. It was quite an interesting thing to do. I did a paper for Mick, and I think it was he was able to implement and use some of the thoughts that I'd put forward to him for the club.
Fantastic. Well, we'll give you some credit then for our championship win last season.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's all down to the setup that you've got there right now. Some fantastic people on and off the field, and an incredible culture and environment which has been built over a number of years now by some pretty impressive people. Mentioned one of them, Mick Newell, but you're here to talk about, or I'm here to talk about one in particular. That's Peter Moore's, who I'm sure will garnish more cliches from the people that you'll speak to over the coming days and weeks, because he's that type of character. He is a very special once in a lifetime personality, and cricket is blessed to have him, and in particular Notts, seeing all the great benefits from having him there for a prolonged period of time. We certainly had so much out of Peter when in his time as a coach at Sussex. He had a long time there as a player, and he almost indelibly inked on the club's history forever and a day. So yeah, I can fully understand why Notts won the championship last year, and I have a feeling it won't be the last.
Well, we very much hope so. I mean, I think we're all expecting another push this year, although obviously Surrey will be very strong. Interesting. So obviously when you won the title in 2003, a lot of people might not realise this, but Sussex is the oldest county, and it was your first ever championship at all those years, which is incredible to actually think, 164 years of waiting, and you and Peter were the two who instigated that. So, because I think you've been promoted previously as well. Talk us through sort of how you built that club up to become champions, not just once, but three times, and plus obviously a string of white ball trophies as well.
For sure. I mean, yeah, it was amazing. I think when I first met Peter in a capacity other than opposite sides playing against each other, I agreed to join Sussex, and my first meet with Peter it was prior to our first committee meeting together, and let's just say that we were so aligned. It was amazing conversation, and the conversation went on a little bit too long, so we were both late to our very first committee meeting together, and we got a proper scolding off the chairman as we walked in 10 minutes late. But we were so engrossed in discussing all our thoughts and ideas and how we wanted to go about not just doing our individual roles, but how we work together. And so what struck me straight away is we were aligned in so many areas. It was just a dream start, really. How did we do it? We did it by trial and error. And I mention error in that we got quite a lot of things wrong in the first 2 or 3 years. And, we were both very fortunate, and I'm very grateful. And it was wise move by the club that at the end of year 2000, we both had 3 years trying to move everything forward in a manner which we wanted to. And we had a horrible second half of the season and ended up finishing bottom of the county championship in the year 2000. And we, in any normal situation, we perhaps may have vacated our positions, and the club may well have looked to look elsewhere. But in that instance, we had a very wise chairman, a guy called Don Trangmar, left field in so many ways, but very impressively so. He, at the end of a very long and difficult meeting for Peter and I, basically closed his book on the table and made a decision. And the decision was that we were going to be given more time, and we were given a very clear remit to go away and come back with some improved clarity, cleaner direction, and more importantly, how we were going to do it, and what resources we needed. So off the back of that was really the beginnings of the charge for the championship. The signing of Mushtaq Ahmed, of course, pivotal, but a lot of the hard work had been done before that. The environment and culture creation that Peter was so passionate about, and I was growing up in Derbyshire, where I was taught principles of hard work, and you get nothing unless you put the effort in. And so aligned with Peter's creative juices, we were able to create an environment where the players and importantly everybody at the club, the wider staff, and of course the members were part of that journey. We created a real one club environment, and I'm sure that's something which perhaps is familiar, that you can see now at Notts. It's very much Peter's way, that everybody carries value towards the creation of a team. And the team is just the front of house on the field element. Of course, it's important, but as important is, for example, the person who sits on the gate, because they're the first port of contact with the public as they come in. So if you've got that person on board and behind you, then you're already on your way, aren't you? That's just how we view things. So we put a lot of work and emphasis into that, and of course, then we managed to persuade the committee that we had a very good team, good squad. We needed something a little bit extra, and that extra was Mushtaq Ahmed. And to say between us all, we got the very best out of Mushtaq would be an understatement. He was just a phenomenal character in and off the field, and was the kind of the finishing piece of the jigsaw that allowed us to win that very first and very special championship in 2003.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things about him is that environment he seems to build, and people just love playing for him. Is that one of the things you notice, that people enjoy playing under him, and his enthusiasm for the game? I mean, even even when he was a player, he seemed to have that love of it. And as a coach, was he just really hands on, full of energy, full of beans all the time?
Yeah, I mean, you're literally describing Peter Moores in all those ways. I guess he's tough. He's tough taskmaster. Master is Peter, but you know what he is? He's fair. And I think that's one of the greatest qualities you can have. The human beings, we're all very different. See, it's absolutely impossible to treat, say, a group of 20 players in exactly the same way. You can't do it because they're all very different. And I suppose Peter's way is that he acknowledged that. And so there wasn't a one size fits all approach to managing those players. But there was a very fair way of managing those players, and often when where coaches do get it wrong is they perhaps treat their senior players slightly differently to their junior players, and it's not done in the most fairest way. Whereas I think Peter would be as fair with a young aspiring 18-year-old as he would be with a 36-year-old sort of senior pro. And the one thing that would align him with both those types of cricketer would be his ability to challenge you to get better. Whether you're 18 and just beginning on your journey, or 36 with still, some miles left in the engine, then he would still be pushing you hard to get better, to improve. If he felt that you were, even 0.5% off it, then you knew about it straight away. But the caveat to that was that, he was there instantly to help you do whatever you needed to do to get that extra 0.5%. He wouldn't just challenge you; he'd challenge you and then say, right, how are we going to get this over the line? And time. He often used to talk about time being the universal currency. How much you have to give to something is completely within your disposal. And, I think Peter would give all his time to the players that wanted to make that difference. I remember getting a phone call at 2 a.m. I'd been struggling for form with the bat, and we couldn't work it out. We'd had countless nets. We had lots of, sort of opinions thrown in, and I got a call at 2 a.m. I panicked, picked the phone up, and it's Pete. And he said, "I've got it." I said, "What?" He said, "I've been watching videos and I've picked up on something you're doing technically. I think it's what we've been looking for." And that was the coach. He was dedicated to the task, and is dedicated to the task. And you were his absolute number one priority. But guess what? So was the 18-year-old who was aspiring and on his journey. So I guess that's one of the great qualities of Peter Moores is, the time that he dedicates to his players.
Blimey, it reminds me of one of those Pep Guardiola stories where I think I read, he was trying to figure out how to play, was playing the Real Madrid match with Barcelona, and he was looking at videos and he suddenly discovered, put Messi as a false nine, and he was ringing people up in the early hours and, I've got it. And sounds like Pete's very much the same cloth, that obsessiveness, that always trying to find the edge. It's just, and he still seems to have that now. I mean, the player one that I spoken to one of the players here recently, and he said he'd come back from being abroad. 5 minutes in the net, he said his game had gone a bit. Pete just noticed something straight away and fixed it. He said straight away, and he says, and this is Pete Moores, who's been away all winter, with 3 different franchise competitions. Lands back from Australia and he's back at Loughborough training, a day or two later. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean I'm far from surprised to hear that account, and that would be a regular occurrence with Peter. He's got such a brilliant eye for the game. He's a very intelligent guy. He's incredibly well read. And research, so that he's constantly, the Peter that I know is constantly, you're right, looking for the next element that will progress the game forward, without losing sight of all those important foundations and traditional values that run the test of time. So again, he has that ability to build rock solid foundations, but introduce something new every year. We always used to wonder at pre-season, what would it be? It was, there are all sorts of different elements, but I suppose when you unravel it all, the basic foundations would always be there, and wrapped around, the cliches. He would constantly talk about respect, and that was the number one. When you ask yourself, what is it all about? Why do we play the game? What are we looking to achieve? Of course, everyone likes winning. I haven't met anybody who doesn't like winning or doesn't set out with a goal to win. But it's an outcome that comes off the back of a lot of incredible stuff before that. Pete would talk about respect. That's the number one element in his beliefs as to why we play the game, to gain respect, to earn respect from your peers, your opposition, supporters, journalists. There's so many people invested in a game of cricket and a season, and there has to be a higher meaning for it all. So I guess, I've adopted that view that, it is the constant journey is the reason why we strive and work so hard and keep repeating that process each year is to gain that respect and create, I suppose, some form of legacy to leave that is hopefully a better place for those that follow you, and something for those players and teams to aspire towards as well. So and that's how it should be, really, in terms of your history should be celebrated and should sit there as a record of what is possible and what can be achieved, and hopefully as an inspirational sort of model for teams and players to follow.
Yeah, and was there like a different side to him though? Because from what I gather, he's obviously very intense when it comes to work, but he can socialise as well. When you do win, when you think, he is a relaxed, fairly carefree bloke, would you say, in that sort of social side? Does he kind of have that as well, sort of the intensity around everything?
Do you know what? Not only does he have the ability to relax and socialize, he's almost again a cultural architect of that world. So many of in the early days at Sussex, many of the early social events that the players would do in and amongst and around a very intense cricket season would have been created by Peter. And more often than not, it would be back to his place where he and his wife Karen would put on food and drinks and some kind of theme for us to go and just unwind and relax, in the brief downtime in a county season. County season is full on, and certainly the way in which the teams train now has got progressively more intense. So time is precious, isn't it? And I think I say they because they come as a family unit, saw back in the day that it was important element of creating that culture was to bring the players and their families together whenever possible, really, and let your hair down and enjoy the other elements of life, and not where it's not too serious and the pressure is none. So Pete he's a very big cultural architect of that type of world, but one thing, that the next day you'd probably be in training and you'd have to train probably a little bit harder than you normally would, because that's just the way that Pete was. Don't mind you enjoying yourself, but you've got to put the yards in and put the effort in and make sure we're in tip-top shape for the next game. So, and I don't think anybody even blinked at that. We just got on with it because we understood the benefits of being able to socialize were countered by the fact that we needed to also be in the best possible condition where it was required to be successful at that top end of county cricket at the time.
And the match which sealed the championship in 2003 was remarkable game. So you had Murray Goodwin making a county record 335 not out, and David Masters for Leicestershire, we went in as night watchman and made his only first class century. And I read a feature on this. Paul Nixon said David was probably as ill as he's ever been playing cricket because they'd been out the night before, towards the end of the season. And he
Yeah.
went out to make 100 the next day. Incredible stuff. And as you said, Mushtaq Ahmed, 103 wickets in the season. I mean, just probably amazing memories for you.
Do you know, so many amazing memories from that game alone. I remember the very first morning of the match. There was a different buzz in the ground. There was this expectancy that, you know, the one thing that the club had never achieved and had always craved was about to happen. And the ground was, as you'd imagine, full to the brim. Not a seat available anywhere. So there's that hum that comes with the ground when it's full. I remember doing the warm-ups, and we were doing our sort of slip fielding practice, and a ball flew through the cordon and nestled up to the boundary board. So I ran up to grab it, and there was a lady there, and I remember so vividly. She was dressed sort of head to toe in tweed, including a matching tweed hat, and I'd never seen this lady before. And as I leant down to pick the ball up, she just spontaneously said, you should be so proud of everything the team have done this year. And I looked at this lady and I said, oh, well, that's very kind of you to say. And I said, if you don't mind me asking, I've not seen you before. I said, so what brings you here today? And she said, my grandfather and my father were such big supporters of Sussex, and they would have been to almost every day's county cricket throughout their whole life. And I just needed to be here for them, you know, and that it struck a chord with me that, you know, again, you know, we're only custodians for such a short time, and you know, a short sort of period in our lives, and that the club's history goes very, very deep and over a number of years, and that goes for every county. And it kind of made it so much more special just to hear that, and the realization for me that for over 100 years people have been coming to support the club, watching it, hoping that they would, you know, one day lift this county championship, and we were about to do it. And you know, later in the day we were you know, we were in a position where we could do that. You know, I think fortunately for myself, I was able to be at the crease when Murray hit the runs that got us to the batting point, which meant we were confirmed as county champion. At the time, you know, I was at the other end, and it was just one of those unique moments in time. I remember the ground went silent for, it seemed like an eternity before the ball thundered into the board. So I think it was Phil de Freitas was bowling, and Murray pulled him for 4 by memory. And as I say, the ground just went completely silent, and it seemed like forever. And then it just erupted in noise, and the game stopped for 15-20 minutes as players came out, and we did a lap of honour. I'd never seen anything quite like it mid-game, and it's quite an incredible moment. We eventually got underway, and this is where I sort of my own little way, I define very good and great, because Murray and I both went past 100, and I suppose for me, I'd sort of achieved what I'd set out to achieve that season. And, you know, and in that game, I'd got my 100, which I was very pleased about. We got the point that won us the championship. I guess at that point, I was done, you know, and I remember walking down the wicket to Murray and saying, Muzz, I said, I think I'm done here. I think I might just have you know, this game's over. We'll go on and win this game, and then we can, you know, we're going to celebrate like we've never celebrated before. I said, I think I might have a little dip here and see how many I can get in a short space of time. And he went, no problem, chum, get on with it. So I then smashed, you know, another 30 odd before holding out deep on the long on boundary, walking off, standing ovation. I put my feet up for about another day and watched Murray get this huge score, 300 and plenty. And it dawned on me that's the very difference between, very good and greatness. And Murray Goodwin was a great batsman, a great mechanic of innings like that, and had this thirst and desire just to keep going. And that was a very, very special innings that he played there. As was David Masters. Yes, I do remember it. I have to say, I might have had a wee bit of a hangover whilst he was scoring those runs, because we celebrated that championship for about, it seemed like 6 weeks. We carried on celebrating. It was incredible. And part of the reason we weren't successful for a couple of years is because we celebrated too long. We stayed too long in that mode of basking in glory, when really we should have been coming back down and concentrating on setting our winter straight, ready for the next campaign. But when I look back and think, well, that was the small price to pay for that championship in 2003, and the lessons that we needed to learn before we could win it again in 2006, then so be it.
Yeah, we'll touch on 2006 in a minute, unfortunately, for Notts fans' perspective. But what was interesting was how you got to Sussex in the first place. So you started out at Derbyshire. So talk us through a bit about the Notts Derbyshire rivalry. And I think you have some good stories about that. And then you're signing for Sussex because, again, there's a great story about your visit to Trent Bridge to speak to Mark Arthur, who was then chief executive. So I'd love to get your memories on all of that, really.
Sure. So I grew up in the Bassetlaw League. My dad played for a club called Staveley Miners Welfare. So I played for Staveley for a few years back in the day when the Notts and Derbyshire, certainly the East Derbyshire clubs were part of the Bassetlaw League, which is a very famous Notts league, and many Notts players played in that league. So I remember growing up playing against the likes of Tim Robinson, Bruce French, and and then after that the Franks', Paul Franks' dad is a bit of a local league cult hero. He's he'd been around a long time, so I was very sort of close to the Notts players, and of course Derbyshire being just a stone's throw down, Derby being a stone's throw away from Notts. We played a lot against each other growing up through the sort of junior stuff into as a junior pro, second 11 cricket, and I'm fortunate enough to play quite a few professional games for early on in my career. But I remember one at Trent Bridge, which was I'd never experienced the proper crowd at Trent Bridge before until this game, and I just remember walking out to bat. It was quite a full house, and the crowd were sort of humming the theme tune to the Addams Family, which I found quite amusing. I wasn't prepared for it, and it became sort of a thing. So every time I would play at Trent Bridge, they would sing this song again, so I remember that fondly. Played some amazing games there. I remember being 12th man in 1987 and having to come on and do bat pad, and a young raw Devon Malcolm was bowling very, very quick. He bowled this 90 miles an hour beamer to a gentleman called Clive Rice, who played forward to it, didn't see it, and it struck Clive on the forearm, and any normal human being, it probably would have snapped in two. I swear this ball just, bounced, several yards back towards Devon down the wicket. And Rice just stood there and looked at him with a steely look in his eye. And of course, Devon was full of apologies. But he then looked at me at short leg, and I swear I just took a little step back, because I thought, this guy is a serious character. He he was hard as nails, was Ricey, some cricketer, and of course the other fella, Richard Hadley, who again, I was blessed to be part of a couple of teams while he was still playing for Notts. And one incredible cricketer he was, one incredible team that was, under Tim Robinson's leadership, and Rice and Hadley. Some fantastic memories of a very, very powerful and strong Notts team. Derek Randall, with all his quirks and characters, played a game for Staveley actually. Derek, he turned up, didn't get out of his car. The captain went over and said, we've won the toss, we're batting, can you bat 3? He said, yep, no problem, Skip. Wicket went, he got out of his car, walked out, had his pads on, hit his runs, got 50 odd, I think, got out, went straight back to his car, sat in his car until we had to field. He was the most quirkiest character in the world, but a hell of a player. And then, yes, you're quite right. A number of years, loads of contests, some really good cricketers in that time. Chris Cairns, Franklin Stevenson, just remembered too. But eventually, very grateful to Derbyshire for the 11 years I had there. They gave me my start in cricket. They support me, they backed me. We had some, a wonderful team, particularly in the early 90s, put together by Phil Russell and Kim Barnett. And I was fortunate to be part of it. Things had soured a little bit towards the end for me. I was very ambitious. I wanted to get myself in a position where I thought I could play for England. I believed I was good enough. But as many, as the time at that period was, we were known as a seamer club. A club that produced seamers. Dominic Cork, Devon Malcolm, to name just the two. And batting at Derby wasn't always that easy. So I'd begun to get this feeling that I needed to leave just to see if I could realise that ambition of playing for England. And eventually, in 1997, Derbyshire released me. I had a year on my contract to run, which triggered quite a bit of interest from a number of counties. And we'd had at Derbyshire Dean Jones as captain, and he'd got this very fancy football agent called Jonathan Barnett, who sorted his contracts out. So Dean very kindly put me in touch with Jonathan Barnett. My dad knew Jonathan as well through football, and he kindly met up and said, right, let's get you sorted. And we pinpointed 4 counties who'd expressed an interest. Sussex, Warwickshire, Kent, and Nottinghamshire were the 4. So we had conversations. I had a conversation with Warwickshire, didn't go very far. I had several conversations with Sussex, which was where I was leaning to, and then a visit to Kent, which again didn't yield a lot of confidence in me at that time. And then the last visit I had was at Trent Bridge. So I came along and met Alan Ormrod. He explained his vision for the team, which was pretty impressive. Jason Gallion would captain the side. And I was a big fan of Jason, liked him as a personality and a character. And then what Jonathan had done is he sent his number 2 up from London to coordinate the meeting. And we met with Mark Arthur, who was the CEO at the time. And I guess we'd already, in our hearts, we'd principally agreed to go to Sussex. And the decision was, 99.9% made. At the end of the meeting, Mark kindly said, would you like to join me for lunch? The agent said, well, look, I need to get back to London, so I'm off, but Chris, you go and have some lunch. So I went for some lunch with Mark, and midway through the lunch, he turned around, he pulled a contract out of his case, and he said, are you going to sign this? And I said, well, I'm going to go home and certainly give it some deep consideration and speak to my wife and see what's the best move for us. And he said, right. And then he reached inside his jacket pocket and pulled out a written cheque for £50,000 and said, if you sign the contract today, I will give you this. And I almost fell off my chair. It was quite an incredible moment. I mean, cricket was certainly in transition from being a very low, underpaid profession. And, central contracts weren't far away. They weren't far down the road. And the game was transitioning. And but I wasn't even prepared for that. If I said to you, we bought our house, our first property in Derbyshire for £50,000, and when I moved down to Sussex, I sold it for £52,000. You can almost understand the enormity of the size of that cheque at that time. And I have to say, it was very tempting. But I did go away. We did a lot of soul searching, and we declined the offer from Notts, and chose Sussex. And whilst I'm absolutely certain I would have had a lot of fun and had a good time at Notts, I'm confident in my own sense that I made the right decision.
No, absolutely. I think considering what you ended up winning, in your career, that's more than justified. I found some quotes. Dean Jones said, "You hit the ball as hard as Gordon Greenidge in his prime." And Murph Hughes said he plays more like an Australian than an Australian. So some high praise from the Aussies for you. That's fair to say. So you've obviously, made quite an impression. Just before I know you need to go. Ironically, I know you're going to Nottingham, which is later today. Because I know you're a school teacher now, head of cricket at a school in Sussex, and I know you're doing some hockey as well. Be wrong not to touch upon some, I say famous, more infamous, not Sussex clashes of the past. The one in 2006 is the one which stands out. We needed 2 points for safety. You were chasing the championship, and unfortunately ended up being relegated. I mean, in front of the Sky cameras, Mushtaq Ahmed again running through us. What do you remember about that day?
Oh, my days. Stephen Fleming is one of the great characters of cricket. He's a good friend of mine. What a player, what a captain, what a leader. But what an error he made on that very first day. I remember being there that day. There's a lot of nerves again in our dressing room, a lot of tension. I'll talk about our sports psych in a moment, but it was a glorious morning, September morning, and it had, for me, it had bat first written all over it, but which is what we were going to do if we'd won the toss. I didn't win the toss. Stephen won the toss, and I still to this day can't quite comprehend when he said, "Oh, we'll have a bowl." Now I understand why, because Notts needed 3 points, and you got 3 points for bowling a side out in under 100 overs back then, I think. So yeah, it was plenty of indication to say that Notts would bowl, get the 3 points, relieve the tension, and then they could relax for the rest of the game. So I do understand that, but it was a beautiful sunny day, and not unlike Lords. I remember Alex Stewart saying to me early on in my career about Lords. He said never look down, always look up. Because often you'd get to Lords and the grass, it would be a green wicket, and I'd learnt my lesson a lot going there, that if it's a sunny, beautiful day at Lords, you bat, because it'll be a glorious batting day, and not too far removed at Trent Bridge. If the sun's out at Trent Bridge, you can score very quickly there. Of course, if it's an overcast, cloudy day, then it can be a swing bowler's paradise. We know that. So, but Stephen opted to bowl first, and of course, I remember going into the toilets, the back of the away dressing room. I could sense there was a lot of nerves in the room, and that's when the sports psych guy called Mike Caulfield, wonderful guy, absolute legend. Not really a sports psych, really, just understood people and pressure and situations. And he sort of joined me at the toilet next to me, and he just looked over and he said, "You all right?" I went, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right. I'm there." And he says it's first 2 days is all about your senior players. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said the youngsters won't be able to cope with the tension of the situation. He said, "So you need your senior players to step up and perform." And I looked and I went, "You know what, you're right." So I went out of the toilet, got the 6 senior players together in the back room, and I said, "Listen, guys, this game is all about us. Each one of us has to perform." I repeated the words that Mike had said, that the youngsters wouldn't be able to cope with the tension and they wouldn't perform, the likes of, young Luke Wright and players like that. So it was down to us, the Richard Montgomerys, the Mike Yardis, the Murray Goodwins, the Jason Lurie's, the Mushtaq Ahmeds. That was it. And they all looked at each other in their eye and went, "Yep, fully agree. Let's go and do it." And, when I look back at that scorecard, all those players performed. The youngsters struggled through that game, but the senior players stepped up. Montgomery and Yardy got off to the most amazing start. I think I managed to chip in with a few. Murray got a few. Jason bowled really, 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 really well with a new ball again. And of course, Mushtaq did the lion's share of the damage. And, I still remember Paul Franks, the realisation on his face when he realised that they were only going to get 2 points and that there was still quite a lot of cricket left in the game, but Notts were never winning it. So when they'd sort of missed the opportunity to get our 9th wicket under the 100 overs, there was just this realisation that it was over, and it was a horrible couple of days for those Notts boys. And as I say, I was very fond of the Notts team. They played their cricket in a way in which I certainly respected. And I know many others did. And, a lot of lads in that dressing room that, I have very good relationships with. And, Franksy being one of them. And, I felt for them that year. I really did. But I wonder whether Stephen will have made, in his whole cricketing life, a worse decision than that.
So Sussex batted first, 560 for 5 declared. Everyone who batted passed 50 other than Carl Hopkinson, who was run out for a duck. Murray got 99. You made 72. Michael Yardy was the only one who actually passed 100 in the end. Yeah. So Notts, I think if they got to 200, would have got that last point they needed to stay up. And at one stage were 143 for 3. And then Mushtaq Ahmed, 4 for 60, Notts following on. 150 all out, Mushtaq 9 for 48. So, and that was Darren Bicknell's final ever appearance for Notts, and he said he got given wrongly out of bat pad and walked off.
Probably.
Yeah. Thinking that's it. I know we haven't got you for too much longer, because I know you do need to go. A couple other matches I wanted to mention quickly. I haven't even got time to mention the fact that when you were there, the highest ever first wicket partnership against Notts was recorded, which was back in 2001. You just mentioned him, Richard Montgomery and Murray Goodwin, 372 not out opening Sussex against Notts at Trent Bridge. 2008, the famous Murray Goodwin heist in the Pro 40 when it looked like all was lost for you, and that was a winner takes the trophy final match. And then one other one, which you might not remember, but I figure I've got to have one here which is positive for Notts.
Yeah.
2004, again, limited overs game. This was at Hove. You needed 6 runs to win, 5 wickets in hand, 2 overs to go. You were there on 93 and it ended as a tie. How do you balls that one up, is what I have to say.
You know what? I don't remember that game. I really don't. Just trying to recall it in my mind. And I don't remember that game, bizarrely.
Got rid of it from your memory. I don't blame you.
I know, but we had, I remember 2 or 3 absolute horror balls up, as you call it, from it when, in my time, I made a horror decision as a captain in a T20 game not to bowl James Kirtley in the last over for some reason against Surrey, and they hit 18, I think, off the last over to win it. That meant we didn't qualify. It was a horror, but I don't remember that game. I remember one against Kent. We needed 10 off 2 overs, and we couldn't get over the line. We lost that game, and that Notts game, I don't remember it. Yeah, it's gone from my memory. One I do remember is the Murray Goodwin famous.
Yeah, well, I'll let you talk about that one then. Go on.
So again, the game was gone. I mean, we Graham Swan had bowled beautifully, difficult wicket, perfect wicket for Notts, and Murray somehow just hung in there. And then with the last 10 overs, batted with Mohammed Sami, and it was just, I remember going into the attendance room at the back of ours because we brought everybody up. So it was a very busy dressing room, and I couldn't get on the balcony to watch the game, and I remember going in the back and sat on the tumble dryer, I think it was, watching the game on Sky. And there was a big crate of champagne by my feet. And I remember Frank's lovely wife popped her head in and went, oh, have you got, she didn't see me. She said, oh, have you got the champagne ready for the boys? Like that. And the 2 lads in there went, yeah. And sort of, looked at her, winked, and she looked around the door and she said, oh, Chris, I'm really sorry. I said, no. I said, look, this is, you've been phenomenal this game and this season, enjoy it when it comes. And of course, the next 10 overs panned out. And I just remember seeing Charlie Shrek run up on TV. I was watching Sky in that back room, and obviously there's a delay on live action, and all I remember is he's about to deliver the ball and I just hear this almighty roar coming from the dressing room, because the lads had seen it in real time, that this ball had just sailed over the boundary for 6 for us to win that game. And anyway, as the roars went up like that, I remember looking at the 2 lads and I said, I guess this champagne will be for us then. And they sort of went, yeah, take it. So I picked the crate up, took it into the changing room, and, that was another big night we had celebrating another fantastic trophy success.
Brilliant. And just quickly, we can't not talk about Sussex. I know you're one of the people who's obviously been calling for change. What do you make of everything that's been going on there with all the financial issues?
Yeah, tough times for the club. Really, really, really tough times. A lot of confused people as well. A lot of worried people. It's obviously been a very difficult passage of time for them. I hope there's an AGM tomorrow, and I hope that the club are able to make some seriously good decisions moving forward. There's a lot of good people down in Sussex that haven't been involved with the club for a number of years, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But there's still a lot of goodwill and a lot of people who will jump at the opportunity to support that club should it be run in a better way. Let me just say that. So without jumping into the politics of everything, it's got itself in a really, really difficult position, and I hope and pray that the people that are empowered to make decisions make good decisions, and there are a lot of good people down there that would be willing to support and help the club find its feet, and not just find its feet, find its place again in the game. It seems to me that Sussex has just lost its standing within the game and looks quite vulnerable at the moment. So I hope that better decisions are made moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you need to go. I only had time to touch on your coaching career. I know you had a good spell at Surrey. I know your daughters are playing the game successfully as well, and even you're one of your lads at Seaford's also got a Sussex deal as well. So obviously doing loads of great stuff. But it's been great to have you on. Have a fun time in Nottingham. I hope you do well in the hockey. Hope you come back with another trophy.
Thank you so much. That's very good. Maybe I'll come on again and we can do my coaching career. We can talk about the girls, and I'd love to talk about the school here as well. What a special world this is. So lots more to talk about, but I've really enjoyed the time, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'll see while you're on the coachship, see if you can remember that game from 2004.
I'll certainly Google it. Yeah, definitely. Can't have it all our own way, can we? So for
No,
sure.
that's good.
No problem. Cheers,
Take,
Joel.
take care.
Take care. Bye.